Purpose, the business of impact. May I now call upon the dignitaries for business session 4 to take their seat on the dais. Ms. Gayatri Shanmugam, Chief Program Officer, Haq Darshak, and Mr. Sujoy Ghosh, CEO, First Solar. Students, please settle down fast. No noise, please. I hope all of you had a good lunch, but I didn't see the proof in that. Let's welcome these dignitaries with a round of applause. Absolutely. This was a little energetic. Thank you very much. May I have the AV of both the distinguished speakers, please?
Ms. Gayatri Shanmugam has held various roles throughout her career. In 2014, she founded 2 organizations, Science Hopper and Litmus and Bubbles, before returning to work as a consultant and finally transitioning to become the Chief Program Officer at Haq Darshak. A BE EEE graduate from the University of Madras, she joined the Bharatidasan Institute of Management, Tiruchirappalli, and later enrolled at IIM Bangalore. Mr. Sujoy Ghosh is a business leader with 30 years of track record in delivering growth in emerging markets. He does this by nurturing deep industry relationships and building high-performance teams with specific expertise on the power sector across multiple segments. He has impeccable domain knowledge of a broad set of technologies from gas turbines to wind and solar PV and grid automation.
May I now invite Ms. Gayatri Shanmugam to address the participants, followed by Mr. Sujoy Ghosh. Presentation. Download aircom. MMF pare. Just have. Mr. Ghosh, do you also have a presentation? So can we have, I'll have it arranged. Yeah, I'll invite Mr. Sujoy Ghosh to go first. Please come.
Am I audible? Thank you, Madras Management Association and Mr. Elango for giving us this opportunity to be here. And it always feels great to be within such a high energy audience, though. And you've told me to talk about energy transformation. So just a brief introduction about First Solar. We are one of the world's largest manufacturer of solar photovoltaics. The company is headquartered in the US, and we make solar panels, which basically form a key. Okay.
Students, I want complete silence now. Please go ahead.
That surely had an impact on the energy, sir. So talking about energy, how many of you are familiar with the term climate change? So a lot of people know about climate change, and how many of you understand what causes climate change? Anybody from the audience? CFCs, okay. So climate change is essentially caused by burning fossil fuels, right? Everybody needs energy to grow. Energy is a key part of our lives. We use energy when we are commuting from home to work or to college. We use energy when we are cooking food. We use energy when we are getting entertained. We use energy when we are going on holidays. So energy is a key part of our lives. And as our economy grows, we keep consuming more and more energy. All of you, today you're students, tomorrow you're going to go and work in companies or start your own. And you're going to, the first thing you do is either buy a house or buy a transport, buy a car or a bike, and you start burning more energy, right? The challenge with burning fossil fuels is when you burn fossil fuels, you get energy and it emits carbon dioxide. And the carbon dioxide which it emits gets trapped in the atmosphere, causes the earth to look like a greenhouse. And so when sunlight is falling during the day, the heat is not getting dissipated, it remains trapped. And that's what's causing the temperature of the earth to rise, right? And if the temperature of the earth rises to roughly about 1.5 degrees Celsius, more than what it was before the start of the first industrial revolution, we will have permanent changes to our climate system. Those will be irreversible. What does that mean? It means that the world will become very different from what you and me stepped into, right? Some of the impacts of the changing pattern of climate we are already seeing, right? When the Earth's heating up, the first thing it does is it melts ice caps. So the Arctic and the Antarctic ice caps are melting, and that's driving sea levels to rise. When sea levels rise, you get extreme weather events. Earlier, the cyclones, which were like once in 100 years, are now happening once a month, right? When you have cyclones, when you have extreme weather events, you cause cities to get flooded. How many of you read the news around Derna, which was a city in Libya? In about 30 minutes, 13,000 people lost their lives. 30 minutes, right? For those of you who watched the TV not too long ago in Uttaranchal and Himachal, the impact of flash floods, which happen when a lot of rainfall happens in a very short span of time, it just washed away entire, cities which were built on riverbeds, right? In Manali, Kulu, Shimla, you had massive, massive landslides causing damage and destruction. Also, extreme weather events can cause drought, and because it's changing rain patterns. And if drought happens, we won't be able to grow food, which means that there'll be food crisis. We're seeing some of that already play out in certain countries, but it's going to become more and more acute if the weather continues to change. And so we got to stop this, right? This is the single biggest problem which is confronting humanity. And climate change doesn't select a country, or it's not attacking the poor or the rich, it's attacking everybody. Everybody is impacted because we have only one Earth and we have only one weather system which governs what happens across the globe. And carbon dioxide is boundaryless. You emit, carbon dioxide in the US, it'll affect the global weather. You emit in India or in China, it'll affect the global weather the same way. And so the only way to stop the impact of climate change without disrupting the growth, it's very important, right? Either one way is we can all go back to Stone Age and stop using cars, stop using television, stop using the internet. Now that's not possible, right? So the only way we can stop this is by transitioning to more sustainable forms of energy. And what are those? Sustainable energy is when you create energy without any emissions, without extracting anything from the ground. And the three primary sources of sustainable energy are the water, the wind, and the sun. Right? So you've got hydropower, which is a form of energy where you're using the force of the water, the natural force of the water, the artificial force of the water through a dam, running a turbine and creating electricity. There's no emissions coming out of it. Likewise, wind, you're using the force of the wind to kind of generate electricity. without anything, any emissions going out. And then last but not the least is photovoltaics, where you take the energy of the sun and then convert using semiconductor technology. You convert sunlight into electrons, collect the electrons, and then use it in a carbon emission free way. Now, historically, till about 5 years ago, most forms of renewable energy or sustainable energy were expensive, right? When we started the solar program in India and way back in 2010, when the country's first solar mission came up, 1 unit of solar energy was 17 rupees 60 paisa, 1 kilowatt hour. That point in time, 1 kilowatt hour of coal power was roughly about 4 rupees. Okay. Today, the situation is different. Today, solar between the two tropics, anywhere between the two tropics, solar energy is the cheapest form of energy on the grid. Because the sun shines pretty brightly between the two tropics and you got long summers. So you get a lot of sunshine. And if you're able to harness that effectively, you can generate electricity at the lowest cost. Today, 1 rupee of solar energy costs about 2 rupees 60 to 2 rupees 70 paisa to produce. 1 unit of wind costs about 3 rupees. 1 unit of coal today costs about 5.5 rupees. And by the way, 1 unit of diesel, if you still have diesel gensets, which were very popular in the 90s, but not so much now, 1 unit of diesel at like 94 rupees to a liter of diesel costs about 20 rupees to generate. Now think about it, right? Energy is a commodity. Because as consumers, we always want energy to be affordable, right? Price of petrol goes up, price of LPG goes up, it hurts everybody, it hurts our budgets. So if we are able to produce the cheapest form of energy using sources which are renewable, which do not damage the environment, then the choice is very clear, right? The choice is we got to make that switch. Because if we don't, then the planet, the way we know it, will cease to exist. And we only got one planet. We can't go and stay in any other planet right now, not yet. So, given that, if you look at what's happening globally, and every country is transitioning to renewable form of energy. There are massive policies and plans and investments happening in this sector. If you look at our country in India, by 2030, the government has committed that 50% of our energy will come from renewable sources, right? At the beginning of 2010, 95% of India's energy was from coal. 95%. Okay, we had very little nuclear. We had hydro, which was very difficult to create because you got to displace a lot of people to build a hydropower plant. And we had a bit of solar and wind, but they're very expensive, right? Today, the government's pledged 50% energy from renewable sources by 2030. And the Prime Minister has made a commitment that India will be net zero by 2070. Now, that means that by 2070, we will be completely carbon free. That's massive. It's a massive transformation in our energy sector. We'll be completely carbon free. And for students like you who are just coming into the professional world, this represents perhaps one of the most compelling opportunities. I would say, if you looked at the early 90s when when the world was transitioning into information technology, there was a boom in IT. That's nothing compared to what we're going to see in terms of the clean energy transition and the opportunities, right? Reserve Bank of India estimates that we will need about 85 lakh crores between now and the end of 2030 to get to the 50% renewable energy capacity, right? And this is just in energy terms. The adjacent effect of this is going to be on transportation and industrial manufacturing, right? So if you're able to decarbonize your electricity grids and switch to renewable power, there's going to be a transition even in the transport sector where people are going to move to electric modes of transport. Right now, we only have trains which are electric, but there is a very clear shift which is coming in the mobility side of things, especially led by two-wheelers and three-wheelers, to move to electric because it's more affordable. And because the next step is going to be passenger cars and then buses and whatnot. So that sector will drive even a further job, employment, investment, startup opportunity for taking part in this energy transition. And all of this, if I tie it back to the theme of the event, is for the greater good. Because every rupee we invest, every day we come and work in a factory to make panels or to create a solar or a wind project or create a e-vehicle, you are directly and indirectly contributing to reducing the carbon intensity of the world, right? And that to me is something which should excite all of you as you look at what's going to be the future of not just India but of the world. It's definitely going to be a more sustainable, decarbonized future, to the extent that there are certain areas where money is not going to be available to invest in assets which will emit carbon dioxide. For example, today the government of India is not able to find loans, either in debt or in equity, to fund new thermal power capacity. Ironically, National Thermal Power Corporation, NTPC, has pledged that they'll only build renewable assets going forward. They'll stop building coal plants. So think about that. That's the kind of transformation which is happening in this sector. It presents a very compelling opportunity to everybody. I'll be open for more questions at the end of the session to take this discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Your presentation is ready.
Good afternoon. There was a reason I wanted the presentation out there because, first of all, the name is very difficult to pronounce where I come from. I thought if there's a reference there, you'll be able to understand the name better, but I'll try. I represent Haq Darshak today. Haq Darshak is a Urdu term, right? Haq means right, entitlement. Darshak is someone who shows that path. Someone who shows the path to rights and entitlements is what Haq Darshak represents. Okay. In Tamil, whenever I come to Tamil Nadu, they'll be like, it's difficult. What does this mean, right? In Tamil, if I have to say, it's Urimai Vazhigatti. That's all, right? Somebody who shows the right. Whenever we come out and make a presentation, there are different flavors of the presentation, right? Sometimes it's a sales pitch, sometimes it's an investor pitch, sometimes it's a impact pitch, right? If I'm trying to sell, then I obviously talk about, what's in it for the buyer. If I'm trying to impress an investor, if I'm trying them to invest in the organization, I'll have to talk to them about what the return on investment is. If I'm talking to an impact organization for a grant, then, I'll have to talk about the social return on investment. Today, I wanted to take a slightly different approach of a business pitch, okay? There is impact, there is social awareness, and there's business. Can these three things come together is the sort of pitch that I wanted to make today. So throughout today, I'll be sort of, not today, throughout for the next 10 minutes, I wanted to make a business pitch for social impact, right? How do you build a business, keeping a very firm eye on the impact? That's what Haq Darshak is trying to do, right? We are a very proud for-profit enterprise. We normally don't find for-profit enterprises in the social sector, right? The social sector that you and I would probably know of as an NGO, foundation, not-for-profit. We are not that, right? We are a for-profit enterprise. We are trying to make money doing good, and we are unapologetic about it. We want to make money out of this. I know that's how we'll be able to build a sustainable business. We'll be able to attract talent. That's the flavor of the discussion today, right? And I'm calling it a discussion. I will try and make this very quick, but I would really hope to get a lot of questions about how does this work, what's in it for me, how do I get to contribute, how do I build a career here. That's the kind of conversation we should be having today, really. So I'll try and talk about the model. What are the problems we are trying to solve? The government has an annual budget of about 9,00,000 crores for social welfare, right? Education, health, pensions, insurance, social security, all forms of, social welfare, because India is a social welfare state, right? There are a set of marginalized community that need to be taken care of, that need help to get into mainstream economy, right? The government recognizes that and spends and has a budget, I wouldn't say spends, has a budget for about 9,00,000 crores. The question is how much of that actually reaches the marginalized, right? That's the problem we are trying to solve, because every year almost 60-70% of this budget remains unutilized, right? How do we reduce that gap? That's the problem that Haq Darshak is trying to address. There are two problems here. One is the problem of awareness, right? Do I even know? I mean, when I say think of a domestic help in your own household. Think of a driver, think of the person who built your house, right? Think of these people and then try and go have a conversation with them about, do you know what you're entitled to? Do you know what schemes the government has designed for you? 99% of the time, the answer will be, I don't know. I don't know that my child is eligible for a scholarship. I don't know my mother is eligible for a widow pension. I don't know the government gives free health insurance, the Ayushman Bharat, right? Tomorrow, if there's a hospitalization in the family, I don't know I can get free treatment. So there's a question of awareness in terms of what I'm eligible for. The second problem is the accessibility. So suppose I create awareness. Suppose somehow I reach the millions of people below poverty line and I am able to communicate to them about the schemes that that they are eligible for. Has it solved the problem? Do they know how to apply for that scheme? Do they know how to fill up a form? Do they know which office to go to get that scheme? That's the problem of accessibility, right? So there's a problem of awareness and there's a problem of accessibility. It is both of these that Haq Darshak is trying to solve through what we call as an assisted tech model, right? We are a 7.5-year-old startup. We continue to call ourselves a startup, right? And the assisted tech model is what we'll talk about for a couple of minutes. There's a technology that houses all the government schemes across the state and the country, right? Central government has thousands of schemes. Every state, it's a federal system, right? Our country is a federal system. So every state government has its own set of schemes. The central government has its own set of schemes. These schemes, please understand, are policy documents. For the government, these are policy documents. It is sitting in the form of a PDF. It is probably a hard copy. It's not even a soft copy, right? It's a hard copy sitting on a bureaucrat's table, with waiting for his signature or something like that, right? How do you get that into a format that a system can read, right? So there is a team that is constantly researching, primary research and secondary research. Capture these schemes in a format that is easily readable, right? So basic, structure it, right? Structure the data in a particular format. What is the name of the scheme? Which state is it applicable in? What is the eligibility criteria? What are the prerequisite documents? What is the benefit? How do I apply for it? You know, basic 6 or 7 parameters that every scheme you can identify with. Capture that in a database. On top of that, build a rules engine. What do I mean by a rules engine? If, else, and, or. That's it, right? If you're a woman residing in Tamil Nadu and you've lost your husband and you're of this age group and you belong to this community and your income level is below this level, you are eligible for a widow pension. That's the rules engine that I'm talking about, right? So if I'm able to build this rules engine on top of the database, I suddenly have a discoverability, easy discoverability of the scheme, right? So what do I then do? I build a simple app where I capture basic details about the citizen. Name, age, gender, caste, which community they're from, what's your occupation, farmer, non-farmer, domestic help, whatever, right? Capture the basic demographics of the citizen, and the system will then throw up what schemes that that particular individual is eligible for. I would urge you all, you go to Google Apps, download the Hak app and do this for your own domestic help or drivers or whoever it is that you have at home. You will be able to discover the schemes that that person is eligible for. At least we can create that awareness, right? Then, like I said, awareness is not enough. We have to solve for the problem of accessibility. So we then have reached out to the remote parts of the country. There are community workers out there. I don't know if you've heard of self-help groups, SHE groups. We train those women to use the app. We train them on how to do the schemes, how to fill up the form, which office to go submit it in, how to follow up with the government officer, how to ensure the benefit is actually received. So the problem of accessibility is solved through feet on the street. So we have trained about 50,000 women entrepreneurs on the ground so far, who have reached out to, in the last 7.5 years, about 4 million citizens, unlocking about 5,000 crore worth of benefits for these 4 million citizens. That's the Hak model, right? So where's the money in this? How is this even a business, right? So we work with a lot of CSRs. Those are some of the impact numbers. We work with a lot of CSRs across the country. We work with philanthropies, large foundations, corporates, who give us service delivery contracts to go and do this on the ground. And that's where our money comes from. That's why people like me are in this organization. I mean, I think during the introduction they were saying, I've done TCS, I've done IBM, I've done all of these big corporates and found my calling in this sector and in this organization finally. Food for thought in terms of, is there money in this sector? Is there a business model that can be built? That is what Hak is trying to solve. This slide must be of interest to you, because these are our investors. People, there's something called impact investment, right? Patient capital, it's called. It is not like, are you giving me returns like this year? Are you giving me return? Are you giving me social returns? It's called SORI, right? A social return on investment. But still, there has to be returns. So there are impact investors who invested in us. I don't know how many of you know, but we appeared in Shark Tank early this year in January. If you follow Shark Tank, it was, I think, one of the first impact organizations on Shark Tank. There was a lot of debate internally whether, should we even go and position ourselves in a Shark Tank, which is all about business, all about profit, all about making money, whereas we are working with marginalized, we are talking about social good. But we took a very firm decision saying we should do it, and we interested 3 of the 4 sharks in there, and they invested in us, and we have closed that round of investment also. So I think, like I said, the whole idea is there's something called the impact sector, there's something called the development sector. Hagdarshak is not the only organization. There are a lot of organizations that are trying to do good here. There are a lot of ways one can contribute. There is tech for good. So if you're a tech enthusiast, we are building technology for this. If you're an operations enthusiast, then there are problems to be solved there as well, and there is money in it. So I think that's the thought I wanted to leave you with. Any questions? We'll take it up after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gayatri. I think we have time for a couple of questions. We have received a few online. I'll just share one question each with one of you so that you could answer that.
So the question is, how does Hagdarshak measure and quantify the social impact it creates? And what key metrics do you use to assess success? That's a great question. I think, like I said, 5,000 crores of benefit unlocked, right? So when we do, there is a framework for measuring impact. That's a science in itself in the development sector, where it's called monitoring and evaluation, right? So where we are able to say, if I unlock Ayushman Bharat for which is the insurance scheme in the country, right? If I unlock Ayushman Bharat, what is a possibility that they will end up using it, and therefore what is the saving? The cover is 5 lakh. Ayushman Bharat insurance cover is 5 lakh, right? So for different schemes like that, we put a number to it to say that, I have unlocked so much of benefit. Sometimes it is a direct benefit transfer. It's called DBT again in this sector, right? For example, in Tamil Nadu right now, there is 1,000 rupees, for women, I will give 1,000 rupees directly. There's widow pension, there's PM Kisan. This is all directly money goes to the account of the beneficiary. So each of the schemes will have a way of calculating the potential unlocked. There is a formula that is unique to every scheme. We then club all that together and say, for this program, I unlock so much benefit. That is how we measure impact. In terms of critical success factors, I think as a business, the scale is a critical success factor. The quality of the application, what is the scheme diversity that I've done? Have I covered all the schemes in the country? That is a critical success factor. Is the beneficiary aware of, the benefits that they've got, how to use the benefit? Has it risen them? Has it taken them out of poverty? Those are some of the critical success factors. Honestly, it is unique for every program, but largely, broadly, this is how success is measured for every program.
So I have a question from Bharat from Chennai. The question is, what challenges you foresee in scaling up renewable energy adoption in India, and how First Solar is working to address those challenges? So I think a couple of challenges we foresee, or I would rather say these are opportunities. If you are, energy, as I said, is a commodity. And anybody who's working in the energy space needs to understand that the final output has to be affordable. So the first thing we look at, and any technology company who is making either solar panels or wind turbines or any other aspect of the whole value chain, the first thing we look at is cost, right? Are we making technology, our solutions, are they cost competitive, right? That is the one challenge is you have to constantly look at costs to deliver the energy. And so everything across the value chain, whether it's the panels, whether it's the installation, whether it's the grid, all of that has to be cost competitive. Otherwise, people will immediately switch to the next lowest cost of energy, and then we lose the whole plot around the fight against climate change. The other aspect when you're dealing with scaling up renewable energy is renewable energy by its nature is called infirm, meaning you cannot predict how you cannot accurately predict whether the sun's going to shine or is there going to be clouds tomorrow, or even during the day you could get clouds during the middle of the day, or the wind may not blow as fast as you want to. So renewable energy sources by nature are infirm power, which means they produce whenever they have the resource. Whenever it's bright and sunny and whenever it's windy, you will get the electricity, otherwise not. But as a consumer, the electric grids, and we want to, the light should come on when we flip the switch, right? So as a consumer of the electricity, we want the energy to be reliable and on demand, right? And that's where there is a gap today. So the only way we can make renewable energy on demand is by storing the energy, right? Right now, the way our electric grid system works is that you produce energy in a power plant, you pump it onto the grid, and the consumer draws it at the other end. So there is no storage of energy. But as we transition to renewables, beyond a point, one has to think about ways and means of cost effectively storing that energy so that it's available to consumers on demand. Solar power can only be produced during the day. So if the whole world is to switch to solar, what will you do at night, right? Unless you have a mechanism to store the energy which you produced in the day and then consume it in the night. Similarly, wind plants only produce, most of the wind happens in the evening and through the late of the night. It doesn't really, it's not very windy when the sun is hot. And so those are some of the aspects of renewable energy as you design a system where today we don't have a problem because we are still scaling up. But if the whole world has to switch to net zero and completely go away from conventional energy, then storage would be the limiting factor.
I just have one more question here. What advice would you give to young professionals and students interested in pursuing a career in social entrepreneurship and making a meaningful impact on society? That's exactly why I'm here today. Do look at a lot of fellowships in the country. There are a lot of fellowships focused on social impact, Gandhi Fellow, Ashoka Fellow, SBI Fellow. Read up about them. Come to organizations like Hakdarshak for internships. Impact is created on the ground, not in offices. So you'll have to be there, out on the ground, be there with the people, understand the problem that is prevalent there, and then solve for it. We are always open to internships and those kind of opportunities, but there are very structured inputs as well. There's an organization called ISDM in Delhi that has a 2-year MBA program just for social development. So there are a lot of such initiatives in the country. You can read about them, do internships, go out there on the ground, even with small NGOs, and learn about these problems and create and be more socially aware, and then make a conscious decision whether you want to move into the sector.
Thank you. There's another question from Lokesh from Trichy. The question is around climate change and sustainability are global concerns. How does First Solar view its role in the international stage, and how do you navigate regulatory and market differences in various countries? So First Solar is a global company, by the way. We operate across 45 different countries. Yes, climate change and sustainability are global concerns. Climate change is a concern. Sustainability is a means by which you are trying to address that concern. If you look at the whole climate tech sector, right, especially around power generation, whether it's solar and wind or even hydro, what has happened over the last 10, 15 years is that the manufacturing of these technologies has consolidated in China, right? So today, China monopolizes about 90% of the global supply chain for solar panels and wind turbines and those, by, all the climate, including batteries, for example, right? And it just does not end there. It goes one level beyond into critical minerals, because when you manufacture a solar panel, you need semiconductors. So these semiconductors are either silicon or they are, rare earths, which are used in various quantities to make solar panels. Similarly, as you look at storage of energy, you look at lithium as one of the key ingredients of current energy storage technology, which is used in mostly the electric vehicles. And so the Chinese government, through a very targeted policy to monopolize the supply chains, actually have acquired mining rights in countries outside of China for a lot of the critical minerals. And so post-COVID, one of the things which the rest of the world realized, including India, which was importing most of its climate tech from China, is that you need to have resilient supply chains. You cannot depend on one country for all of your technology needs for doing the fight against climate change, because you're moving away from dependencies on oil to using renewable energy generation sources. But if you just switch your imports from oil producing countries to climate tech producing producer, which is China, you've not solved the problem. And so post COVID, we've seen a significant amount of policy in a lot of the large economies of the world, whether it's India, whether it's US, and most recently in the European Union, where these countries are looking at connecting their climate goals to industrial policy and connect it to manufacturing of those technologies within the country. And now that's not cheap. It takes a lot of money. It takes regulations. And we've seen this play out now in India with the production-linked incentive schemes, which have come up to encourage investments in manufacturing of solar panel, advanced chemistry, batteries, and so on and so forth. Also, in the United States through the Inflation Reduction Act, and then in the European Union, they're talking about the Green Deal, which will incentivize European manufacturers to produce these technologies for deployment in Europe, as Europe basically faces a threat of dumping of green technologies, whether it's in the transport space or in the renewable energy space from China. So there is the biggest challenge today we see in this whole global fight against climate change is over concentration of technology and manufacturing in one country, which is actually trying to weaponize that capability. And a reaction to that is really trade conflicts, which are at play, where countries are putting up barriers and to imports from China in order to create domestic manufacturing. However, given that every crisis is an opportunity, that is going to unlock a lot of opportunities in countries like India and the US and other parts of the world for people like you to go and start working in this space, in the technology space, in the climate tech space, as one looks at innovation happening in all these sectors, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's storage, and a lot of them are in this in the IIT Madras Research Park, right? As you look at this whole transition, not just in terms of the energy transition, but also in terms of the technology transition shifting out of China. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh and Ms. Gayatri. Fantastic insights there in this session. And thank you for so patiently answering the queries that have been sent online. Yes, they deserve a very good round of applause, taking their busy time out, traveling all the way to Chennai to be with us this afternoon. May I request Mr. Ramkumar, former President MMA and Chairman Shanti Gears, and along with him Mr. Sitaraman, who's also a committee member and Chairman Super Auto Forge, to join us on the dais along with Mr. Ilango, the convention chairman, to honor the dignitaries, please. Fine, sir. Fine, sir.
Surprise me. I was awake.
So here goes this green memento along with the regular memento. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause. So that was a special session for Profit with Purpose. I'm sure both the presentations have given a lot of ideas to these young students how to venture into social impact entrepreneurship. I'm sure many of them have taken a lot of lessons from this session. So moving on, the